Hello and welcome back to the Manga Education Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Chen. I'm a writer-producer for the manga Webtoon space. I run a studio, Inspired Productions, that produces my stories, and the popular ones we try to take to anime. This video is about educating you guys on the manga Webtoon production space, and you guys submit your questions for me to answer. But before we get into the video, please make sure to smash the like button. It really helps us out for getting this type of video out to more people. And if you're interested in learning more about the anime manga Webtoon space from an educational standpoint, please make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification to be notified whenever we put out these videos. It would be great to see you guys on all of them. Anyway, let's get right into the video. The first question is going to come from Patreon because Patreon gets priority for asking the questions. It's also where we post stuff like behind the scenes, scripts, advice, more intermediate level production stuff. Higamana asks, what kind of stories would you like to see more of in the manga space that you feel are uncommon or have yet to be published? Honestly, Japan takes a lot of risk in terms of like their manga stuff or their manga stories and concepts, so I don't think people necessarily need my advice on what kind of risk to take there. Like Dan was a very risky concept and it got published, went big. So I think Japan's going to be taking a lot of risk. The thing I will say is that as the market moves from purely consumers in Japan to outside of Japan, again, Europe, US, even like South America, a lot of these countries within these continents obviously are becoming very interested in manga. Again, in the US, manga is more popular than our own American comic. And so when I think about that, there's a massive audience, let's say in the US or France. There's also a demand from those consumers for a story that resonates more with the themes that would resonate with that audience. So a Japanese creator is limited by their experiences in life. That is the same with any creator from any part of the world. And so as the audience around the world starts to crave experiences or stories that would not just come from only Japanese creators, but also like stories and themes and messages that come from creators all around the world, I'm gonna think that you're gonna get a lot of different stories that, again, it has to feel like Japanese manga. If it doesn't feel like it, it's not gonna be manga. But I think that the story can come from anywhere. You could create stories about American history. Like France and Germany, they create manga that again feels very different, but also similar to the Japanese manga industry. And I think that's a really key way of how to respect the medium of manga, but also tell different kinds of stories from a different kind of lens. I don't think that creators should strive to create stories that would only resonate with the Japanese audience, just because unless your goal is to go to Japan to create manga there, which is totally fine, you're just competing against a Japanese creator in Japan. So like if you're gonna create like the next samurai manga, are you gonna be more authentic than someone who grew up and lived in Japan for creating samurai manga? Hard sell to me, in my opinion. You might be better off doing a cowboy manga if you're from the West. Anyway, that would be my thoughts, is that there's gonna be a lot of different types of stories that are gonna be coming out as the international audience starts to rise and increase. So now the next question is gonna come from YouTube. So shout out to YouTube. Question is, how do you find a professional manga editor, like someone who has a lot of experience? Yeah, so for the manga industry, usually that's gonna come out of winning competitions in Japan. Again, as the audience starts to move out, if you wanna connect with French editors or US-based editors, there's competitions. A lot of it's through connection. It's kind of like any sort of networking thing. In any industry, it's like, how do you get connected to this person? And the easiest way to get connected is by producing something. In the manga industry and webtoon industry, it's by producing something that will catch their attention and make them want to work with you or reach out to you. And so manga competitions happen to be the easiest way to showcase your own skill in front of an editor. You could also put your stuff online and hope that an editor checks it out and sees it. I think that the more you put yourself out there, the more likely an editor will find you. And yeah, it can be quite hard. I think there's a lot of people that are creating things and there's not as many editors. There's less editors than there are creators. So you do have to stand out. Does your Patreon include on how do you format episodes, like the size of canvas and panels, etc.? So I'm assuming this is about the Webtoon space. If you want to learn how to format your episodes in terms of the size of your canvas and all that stuff, Webtoon Canvas actually has a page that gives you all those dimensions. If you're talking about Japanese manga, the Silent Manga Audition website has also those dimensions and page formats, everything from down to DPI and all that kind of stuff. Like all the format stuff, what your canvas should look like is on those two pages. So I would definitely look up Silent Manga Audition formatting and then Webtoon Canvas formatting as well. This should have all that that stuff for you. As a woman who is interested in creating a berserk level, philosophical, deep female lead manga or comic, what are my options? It seems like seinen is supposed to be for men, but what do I do if I want the seinen vibe but for women? Would that completely fail? So if you're talking about creating content for adult women, the term is josei. So like there's adult female projects out there, again, that are meant for an older female audience. That being said, if you're looking to create something like Berserk, seinen doesn't mean that it's only men that are consuming that project. It's actually funny because shonen, for example, is something that is primarily made for men, boys, like Naruto is made for boys, but women also are open to reading and consuming Naruto. So it doesn't mean that just because you create a seinen project doesn't mean that only guys are going to be checking that out. Also, women, such as yourself, because I'm assuming you like Berserk, will also be open to checking out that series. An interesting fact that I learned is that there's more friction between boys and men to go over to reading shoujo and josei type project, but there's less friction from women going over into shonen and seinen. That being said, women also read more. That's just factual. There's just a bigger audience of girls that are reading, at least at the manga level. And the anime level, boys are open to just like watching pictures move. But anyway, what are your options? You could create a seinen manga. I don't think there's really a big downside to that. You just have to keep in mind that you're creating for a primarily male audience and that women will also be open to checking out that project. If you want to just create something that is deep and philosophical, I would really lean into the josei style. Again, you would then be isolating more of the male audience if you did that, but there are a lot of josei projects that do get deep and philosophical. Things that tend to have a lot of violence and fighting and that kind of stuff tend to be, again, made for boys, technically in the demographic category. That doesn't mean that women can't read it. It just means that that's the primary audience. So your two areas that you can look at if you're looking to create for adults, josei, seinen. That being said, you can create a shonen series or a shoujo series, again, made for younger boys and girls, like teens, that still have that deep philosophical feeling. It doesn't have to be seinen for adults to tell a deep philosophical story. So there's different options there for you. And what will determine whether or not you fail is your concept, your story, your execution. What are some top Webtoon sites for those of us really green and getting started? Yeah, so I'd say Webtoon Canvas is a pretty decent place to start. There's a pretty built-in audience there that just consumes original content. And also you can look at like their more curated content, like the originals. A lot of my projects are on there to see like what audiences are reading at more of a curated level and more professional creators are also creating and what they're doing right. Again, Tapas is the next in line for the international, or at least the US space. They're not as big as Webtoon, but they have a lot of content that they've licensed over there. But if you're definitely looking for more of like international creators, right now Webtoon has the most international creators out of any platform out there. And if you're looking for manga, looking for international creators just to see what other rookie mangaka are doing, Manga Plus is a good place to take a look at. Yeah, Webtoon and Tapas are pretty good ones. How does a Western audience get into the manga industry? It seems like it runs through Japan and all the connects and opportunities are only there. Also, why aren't we seeing US manga publishers popping up? Surely there's a lot more demand these days. Yeah, so if you're a Western artist, you probably have to go to Japan. It's funny, I actually had an offer, but I had to move to Japan to accept this offer, which I can't do. Unfortunately, I have family here, I have my life here, all that kind of stuff. It's hard to uproot everything to move to Japan. So I couldn't do that, unfortunately, but I think that Western artists can get into the manga industry by focusing on the Japanese industry if you want. But if you're interested in doing things from the US or something like that, it is still a developing industry. I think there's some publishers that are starting to emerge in the US, none of them of which are extremely massive. And there's also no successful manga series that have come out of the US yet, I'll be honest. But here's the thing, that is room for disruption. If someone creates a good series that can be on par with the types of products that they would develop in Japan, then you'd be one of the first. So I think it's a space that I'm hoping to pioneer over the next year or so. But I think in the international market, it is pretty hard. But yeah, the US market is massive for manga consumers. But in terms of creators, there's not a lot of like strong enough creators that can compete at the same level as the Japanese creators. Rightfully so. We don't have a lot of editors over here that understand manga. We don't have a lot of artists that have been doing it for enough time at the same level as the Japanese artists and don't have that level of mentorship that you can get from like, if someone was 16 and worked on Tatsuki Fujimoto's Chainsaw Man and learned from him while doing that, no doubt by the time bro is 18 or 19, he's able to do his own series, right? So I think that the industry just has to build up here, and that's going to be something that takes time. There are signs the industry is starting to build up again with the Viz one-shots, publications, Dark Horse, that kind of stuff. He's right about manga being for boys. First off, manga is not just for boys. I didn't say that. So I really do feel like Webtoon space is more feminine, woman, LGBT centered, at least in America. Every time I'm on Webtoon, I feel like I would have to create something for that audience, and that's not my thing. So I'm gonna counter a few things that you said about that. Manga being for boys. It's not for boys. I think it's a lot of the most popular projects are created for the shonen space, which again is meant for teenage boys. So it's not even meant for adults such as myself. Yet, in America, a lot of the people who are consuming this type of stuff, again, are of the younger audience, but also the adults. There are a lot of adults that love One Piece, that have been reading it since they were kids, and now they're like 30 and they're still reading One Piece. So I think that, first off, age has nothing to do with whether or not you will consume manga, but also gender. Because I actually have a girl, who got her boyfriend into anime and manga recently, and all the stuff that she put him on was all shown in anime and manga. So a lot of girls are really into the very action-packed shonen manga type feeling. So I would definitely counter the fact that manga is just for boys. It's definitely not. A lot of girls read shonen manga also. There's also a big shoujo and also a josei market in the US. So if you're looking at the Webtoon space that's more feminine in America and LGBTQ centered, I would say, first off, the comics market in the US for girls, yes, they happen to be into more romance or LGBTQ type content. And the Webtoon US, like the platform audience, happens to be probably a lot more female centered. That being said, there is a huge push for more shonen type titles. Like when I think about, for example, romance titles, it is a lot easier to perform well on the Webtoon platform. They're cheaper to make. There's a lot more girls who are reading romance titles, but it's really hard to get a franchisable title out of something that's optimized for romance. A lot of those titles, hard to turn them into big franchises like the next Star Wars or even the next Solo Leveling. Solo Leveling is a good example of a webtoon, action webtoon, made for boys that is now optimized, turned into an anime, and is now becoming games and just being really franchised, right? So the Webtoon space right now, definitely more female readers right now, but there is a lot of action titles. There's a lot of stuff that's made for boys. When you think about like all the manhwa edits that you get from like the teenage boys that post on TikTok, those are all series that are made for boys, that are all shonen facing. So again, yeah, I would agree with you that the highest performing ones are definitely made for women, but there's a lot of action titles that can help you build intellectual property in the action space for boys. So you don't have to only just create for girls, if that was your concern. Illuminated Crown. Anyway, I think I'm gonna end the video there. Thank you guys so much for watching this week's video. If you guys got this far in the video, make sure to comment the word of the day, Fiji, like the mountain. Is it? Yeah, the mountain. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching. Smash the like, smash the subscribe, and I will catch you guys in next week's video. If you guys also have any questions, please, YouTube comments. I answered them in this video, so make sure to leave comments or questions. Yeah, I'll catch you guys on next week's video. Peace.